Hello, good evening everybody. It's Dr. T here. I am just in from hitting my 10,000 steps. Well, I actually didn't quite get there. I think I'm at, what am I at? I'm about 2,000 steps short. But I have managed to get some steps in, and I'm probably going to have to get on the exercise bike after this. How are you, everybody? How is everybody doing in lockdown? There can't be very many of you who aren't in lockdown. So give me a wave. Let me know how you're doing in lockdown. What have you managed to do with yourselves today? Hopefully you're not all stressing out too much. Hopefully that you're making healthy choices. Hopefully you're looking after yourselves and each other. If you are not in lockdown, feel free to let us know that too. Make us all feel really jealous. Because, I'm jealous. Look, to be honest, I'm actually still working, but through telehealth with most people. And it's been really nice to be able to continue to help women with their gynae health and help our beautiful fertility couples as well. Oh! The guest of the hour is on. I'm going to hopefully swipe right if I know how to do this. Hi, Nick. Give us a wave. Let us know you're here. Now, I think I can go live with... That's right. I had to learn from my younger colleagues how to bring someone in live. Cassie Silver's here. Hello.
Hello.
We did it. We did it.
I wasn't sure what was happening there.
Look at me, technological wizard.
I know, killing it.
Oh my God, look at us. Dual lives on an Instagram. Can you believe it?
First for me.
Oh dear. You're an Instagram virgin.
Yep. Go easy on me, please.
Oh yeah, no worries. So good to have you on. And look, there's lots of love coming to you from our audience. All of those people who are enjoying their evening, trying to figure out what to do with themselves after yet another day in lockdown. Nick, how did you go?
To be honest, it hasn't been that bad because the kids are shipped off to school, and I've still got some interest from clients. They're not all falling off. They're still keen to look after their health.
Yeah, good. Yeah, that's good. No one's turned to the bottle yet.
No, there's been talk of it, but no. I think we've all been through this before, right?
Yeah, that's right. There's not the emotional angst so much as there was in the past. We kind of know that this is going to end at some point in time, and we'll be able to get back to some sense of normality, which is good, which is really good. Now, we've got lots of friends on tonight who are so eager to hear from you. So I just want to tell everybody a little bit about you. So, oh gosh, Nick, we met over half a dozen years ago. I swear we've known each other for a little while now. We met at a nutrition event, and at that event, Nick was talking about my favorite subject, which is gut health. And I think that's where we've kind of collaborated pretty much since. So Nick is an accredited practicing dietitian. He's working with us together at WOOM. And Nick has also done some extra training, upskilling in the area of nutrition associated with fertility, with reproductive health. And we are super excited and so grateful to have him on board at WOOM and with all of our fertility patients. Yes, look at the love that's coming at you right now, Nick, because it's a question we always get asked about, like, how can I change my lifestyle? But more importantly, how can I change my nutrition? What can I do differently to help improve my chances of conceiving, help improve my PCOS, lose weight, improve my experience of endometriosis, all of that? We know that nutrition plays a role. And this is the man to help us out with that. So we're so grateful to have you on board. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your background? Because I think your background's amazing and how you got to the point where you are now.
Well, how far do you want me to go back, though?
And maybe just go back a little way.
Okay. Let's start off. I'll briefly introduce myself as a former tour guide around Australia and a former MC, and I was on a fair bit of radio in Melbourne and Sydney. So there's that part of me. And then when I was a late bloomer to the whole dietetics world to become a dietitian. And I suppose I did start off as a generalist dietitian. So I would see people about, things like gut health, as you mentioned before, fertility, diabetes, heart disease, Crohn's, you name it, cancer, all those lovelies. I trained up at the Australian Institute of Sport as a sports dietitian as well. So I'm currently an accredited sports dietitian. So I see people that want to swim over to Rottnest Island for some crazy reason. Yeah, so very broad, very diverse range of expertise. But then one day, somewhat recent, I woke up and I was like, no, I want to specialize. And a few of my friends had been having troubles conceiving, trying to have babies, like IVF round after round after round, and they kept asking me questions, and so I looked more and more into specializing in the area of nutrition and fertility, and it's just fascinating. Like, it's an untapped area. No, not many dietitians actually work in this area, and it's a real pain point for so many people, including my friends. So I've slowly but surely, since I woke up that day, moved towards specializing in women's health around endometriosis and polycystic ovarian syndrome, gut health like irritable bowel syndrome. But a lot of those conditions are also related to our bowel movements and abdominal discomfort, pain, diarrhea, constipation, bloating, all that kind of stuff. So there's a real sub niche. And so if I see anybody regarding fertility, gut health is like a real consideration pretty much every single time. So it's really cool that I could take that passion for gut health and implement it within my new passion for fertility.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. Don't you love getting out of bed in the morning and going, how can I make a difference today? I think that's one of the most wonderful things about being in an area that you really love. So we've got a lot of questions, and I tell you, there's 30 odd people that are watching. If anyone else out there has any burning questions that you want to ask Nick, be kind. But please also know that the information that we are sharing on here is very generic. We don't want to be answering anyone's specific clinical issues. For that, you need to come and see Nick and spend some time with him. But if you have any general questions about things that you might have read or things that you'd like to know about perhaps any women's issues, fertility, PCOS, endo, please don't hesitate to pop them in the chat, because I know that there's going to be other people listening that will have questions around that. So I've got a few questions here, Nick, and interestingly, many of them actually relate to polycystic ovarian syndrome. So I'm going to kind of try and summarize them in that area.
Okay.
So let's just go to two questions in this one. PCOS, fertility and diet, because that's often a combination. Is there a certain amount of protein to aim for? And how much do carbs really impact on PCOS and insulin resistance in relation to weight loss? That's probably the more important one. And then how much protein should you aim for?
Okay, so yeah, PCOS, certainly a sub niche of mine. I really find it just an amazing area to work in to help people overcome, variable hormone levels, insulin resistance, overweight, obesity, and even just 5% weight loss can have a huge impact on somebody's fertility outcomes. It's not much, but what I do find a lot of my patients are probably looking to more than that 5%. And it can seem like a huge mountain to climb, particularly when you've got insulin resistance, right? So for those who aren't that familiar with insulin resistance, essentially, if you've got that condition, it's really, really, really hard to lose weight. It's like you could try, most people have tried 1,000 diets and had some success, but were unable to sustain it. So basically it involves how you process the carbohydrate that you consume most of the time. And if your cells have a resistance to insulin, that means your pancreas will release more insulin. Now, insulin is a storage hormone, right? So the more insulin you have traveling around in your blood, unfortunately, the more you tend to store. So we want to try and reduce that insulin resistance. And low carbohydrate diets have definitely been associated with helping that situation. And to the point where some people might go all the way to a very, very low carbohydrate diet. And that's known as the ketogenic diet, where you're consuming something around 20 to 50 grams of carbohydrate in a day. Your body's switching its primary fuel source to mainly using fats and breaking down proteins to get by, I suppose. So, yeah. So the burning question is, how far do you need to go? And like a lot of my patients come in and sure, they've tried the keto diet and they're like, Nick, I just can't sustain it. It's just like the hardest thing to continue on with. Yeah, I lost some weight and presume my insulin resistance decreased and my blood glucose levels improved, but I just couldn't do it. And I've got this huge motivation as well behind me to try and have a baby, right? So I think it's a really hard diet to follow. And I think if we kind of peg it back a little bit and perhaps let a little bit of carbohydrate into our diets, particularly if we're exercising, right? If you exercise, your cells become so much more responsive to insulin and you become less insulin resistant. It's kind of what metformin does for us too. So if you've got like this, imagine this room where I am right now is a cell and there's a door to that cell. Insulin's like the key that opens up that door. So when the door swings open, the glucose from your bloodstream actually waltzes on in. And so if we can just use one insulin molecule instead of multiple insulin molecules just to get that door open and get that glucose into the cells, then we're in less of a state of storage. I hope that kind of makes sense to people. I don't know, Tam, what do you think? Did that make sense?
Yeah. I love the cell, the door, the key analogy. I think that's really good. So if somebody were to combine a slight reduction in the carbohydrates, but increasing their physical activity, they're going to achieve pretty much the same or in the ballpark as if they restricted right down to a very low carbohydrate diet, which is not really that sustainable. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. Like trust me, I've seen a lot of patients, and we have tried many different approaches, and the one that seems to be the one that sticks is where we do get that physical activity and where we do keep an eye on our carbohydrates. So we make sure that they're smart carbohydrates, so to speak. So the ones that are really high in fiber, so some examples might be some basmati rice or some starchy vegetables or, some quinoa, for instance, fruit. Those types of carbohydrates are what I call smart ones because the rate at which they empty into our blood is a hell of a lot slower than a can of Coke. And also they come with a whole host of vitamins and minerals. And like the research around nutrition and conceiving and having a baby, it actually involves things like those smart carbohydrates, believe it or not, whether you've got PCOS or not. Yeah.
Yeah, so, that's really interesting. Like if you look back at the Nurses Health study, which is like that really long running study that looked at tens of thousands of nurses, and they looked at the most fertile group versus the least fertile group, and they looked at their difference in diet. The nurses that were most fertile, it was the things that you would go, oh, that I would expect that, like, you know, whole foods, whole fruits and vegetables, whole grain breads. Like, it's the sensible stuff. It's not the crazy extreme stuff that people need to be doing. Would that be right?
Yep, completely. And
it's
another thing,
too easy, don't you reckon?
Yeah, I know. Like, if we were really to get to the bottom of it in a short and succinct way, it would be eat healthier foods and exercise more, and don't waste your $29 on apple cider vinegar. Like, don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, sure. Like, I went to uni for something like 4 years or so to become a dietitian, and since then I've always been studying and trying to keep up with all the evidence. So it's not that simple, but if you have 3 well-proportioned meals a day, the carbohydrates don't completely take over your plate like I do see a lot. And it's full of vegetables, nuts and seeds, oily fish, lean meats, you know, a Mediterranean based diet, you're generally going to do well.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah. And with that nurses' health study, one thing that they actually found was the people that had, with PCOS, the people that had really high protein intake were the least fertile out of the whole group. But what they also found was those that consume protein from plant sources, as well as dairy, the terrible dairy, as well as dairy and eggs, they were also found to have the best chances of conceiving. Yeah.
So a nice, well-balanced diet, really.
Correct.
And do you think portion control is really important in that? That's something that sometimes gets away from us, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure. Like, particularly this week, right?
I know, chocolate craving when you're in lockdown. Terrible.
Yeah. Even the diet police over here, or the nutrition police, I've been waking up in the morning going, okay, today get back on track, Nick. So
we're all human.
You know, we are all human, and my approach is really balanced. So I think you can still eat the odd large portion and the odd bit of chocolate. And guess what I had for dinner tonight?
What'd you have?
Homemade burgers.
Oh, I love a good homemade burger, but you can do a homemade burger exceptionally well, because it's got you can have a lean protein bun, you've got lots of veggies in there, and you can have you don't have to have a lot of bread. You can even put it on some mushroom, can't you?
Of course. Yeah, or you could do the base as bread. Yeah,
one side of
and then the burger. Yeah. See, that's balanced. A little bit of hard
cheese, a little bit of hard Parmesan, just to give it a little bit of sharpness. That's a beautiful meal. Love a burger. Hey, somebody has asked the question, just while we're talking about this, if you start to crave sugar while you're taking metformin, should you be concerned? That's an interesting one. I wonder if the craving would have been there regardless of the metformin.
Yeah, I think it depends what you're eating as well, right? So if you have your traditional spaghetti bolognese or curry, you know, so the bolognese comes with the spaghetti, the curry comes with a hell of a lot of rice. Typically, I don't see that many veggies with those types of dishes. Or if you have Wheat Bix in the morning and you've got some banana or some honey with those Wheat Bix, you're going to experience a low in blood glucose levels, because your pancreas essentially goes, freaks out, and just releases a truckload of insulin. Remember those keys that open up those cells, all cells in our body. And then the door swings wide open. And then because there's so much insulin, because the meal was very carby, you find this huge rush of glucose into the cells, and then boom, dip. Down goes your blood glucose levels. Now, guess what the brain absolutely loves? Glucose. Yeah, it loves glucose. It's its primary fuel source. So when the glucose goes down in the blood, do you think the brain's going to sit around and go, oh yeah, if we go offline for a couple of minutes, it's not going to be that big a deal? Of course not. So the brain releases a whole bunch of hunger hormones, one in particular called ghrelin, and that ghrelin makes you feel hungry. And then other parts of your brain kick in and go, how can we get those blood glucose levels up really fast? I know, carbohydrates seem to do it last time. And so you get that sugar craving.
Yeah, and so you're going like this.
I call it the blood glucose roller coaster.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. Yeah, okay. So complex carbs or carbohydrates eaten with, say, protein or some fats to kind of slow down the release. Would that be the way to go, Nick?
Yep, definitely. Yeah. And in regards to that the protein question with PCOS, I would still be going for something between, and this is where we get a bit technical, you need to get a calculator out sometimes, depending on your mathematical ability, but something between 0.8 grams of protein and 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. That's around. But I said to myself that I wouldn't say, but it really all depends on the person. But I've just gone and said that now. But it really does.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I reckon the big thing too, and if we're talking about long-term outcomes, weight loss, I think the big thing is consistency. Like, it's not something you do for a short period of time and then go, okay, I'm done now. PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, is a lifelong condition. It's a syndrome. It's a cluster of symptoms. It is an endocrine disorder that just so happens to have gynecological implications. That's why you come and see someone like me. But it's something that you've got to manage for the rest of your life. So what you've got to do is make decisions around your food and your exercise that you can sustain for the rest of your life, because this is it's not a quick fix.
It isn't. Yeah, and you're right. And a lot of the time, so I've done some training in weight management psychology, and that really broadens out to any kind of management around food intake, because at the core of us are our values and our identity. And I guess if you're just working on getting your plate proportions right, like, life sometimes gets in the way, and then a lot of the time those efforts kind of get put on the back burner. So a lot of the time it's like looking at the person's identity, like, think about it. What's important to you? And how does food intake relate to that?
Yeah, that's true. And just giving you a plug right here and now, we have Nick doing an amazing workshop at WOOM. What date is it, Nick? I'll have to look it up. Sometime in the next few weeks. At WOOM, it's a mood and food workshop. And while Nick's answering the next question, I'm just going to go and look up the actual date. But we'll be putting the Eventbrite link if you are in Perth and we're no longer in lockdown. We'd love to see you at his mood and food event, talking about lots of things, including emotional eating, which we all know about. So Nick, there's another question here. This one is more about pregnancy. And it says, can you give some general advice for maintaining a vegetarian diet during pregnancy? Are there any must-have foods?
Okay, so you can definitely meet your nutritional adequacy following a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet. Obviously, the more omnivore it becomes, the easier it is to achieve. So there's varying kinds or types of different vegetarian diets. So, I'll have a patient come in and say, I'm vegetarian, and then I always have to ask the question, do you eat eggs? Do you eat dairy? Do you eat fish? They're generally the three main ones that still fall within a type of vegetarian diet. And if that's the case, then eggs, eggs, fish, and what was the other one I mentioned? And dairy are definitely the key foods that you should be eating, along with nuts, seeds, legumes, soy in the form of tofu, right? And a whole bunch of green vegetables. Now, the more you go towards veganism, the more that those nuts and seeds, legumes, tofu, etc., really become super, super important. There's also like the meat replacers, which are usually fortified with some great vitamins and minerals, namely B12, which you just do not get on a vegan meal pattern. If you're having animal-based foods like eggs and dairy and fish, then you will be getting some vitamin B12 from those. But typically, if you're a strict vegan, you've got to worry about iodine, iron, B12. Folate usually really good with, because hopefully you're eating a lot of green vegetables, which are really high in folate, and zinc. And you'll find with iron and zinc, legumes, nuts and seeds, they'd be the main sources right there, as well as you get them from vegetables, but you need to eat a lot of them. Yeah. With iodine, iodized salt is a good one, but as we know with salt, it's not the greatest for us. So if you're eating a really clean, or following a really clean meal pattern, which is unprocessed, well balanced, you can usually afford a sprinkle of iodized salt, and that'll take care of the iodine component as well. So that's really B12 from those meat replacers, from some soy or tofu, and nutritional yeast is just awesome. Like, we had minestrone soup on Sunday night, because we're doing soups on Sunday nights for some reason, probably because it's freezing. And I just whacked a whole bunch of nutritional yeast in the minestrone. And my wife was like, "What's that?" And I said, "Oh, it's B12, essentially." But it's also really fibrous, so it's great for gut health. And it needs to be, I reckon, a tablespoon of that a day. If you aren't eating many animal products, or none at all, is really imperative.
Yeah, I've got to remember that nutritional yeast, because I've got a packet in my cupboard and I forget to put it in soups and things like that. So I'll remember that for next time. Thank you for reminding me. Another question. Is it true that moderate to high carb diets can cause miscarriage in women with PCOS? So what are your thoughts on this? I've got some thoughts on this, but I'd like to know yours first.
I think high carbohydrate diets can increase your risk of miscarriage, whether you've got PCOS or not. Is that what you were going to say?
Yeah, I mean, we know that women with PCOS have a higher incidence of metabolic syndrome, and therefore have that sort of insulin resistance. They're more prone to that. But we know that any woman who has a disrupted metabolic milieu, so metabolic environment, when they conceive, they tend to be a little bit more hyperglycemic and hyperinsulinemic. That in itself, whether it's due to the fact that they've got PCOS, whether it's due to the fact that they're morbidly obese, whether it's due to the fact that, they eat lots of sugar, is going to set up that metabolic environment that is not conducive to an ongoing pregnancy. So I think that you've kind of got the two risk factors there, don't you? You've got the insulin resistance from PCOS, and then you're sort of just adding fuel to the fire by taking in a simple carbohydrate diet. So it does increase miscarriage.
And I reckon it's got something to do with inflammation as well. So
definitely.
Yeah, when you've got that hyperinsulinemia, or that high insulin, you're put into an inflammatory state. Now, if you combine that with the inflammation from PCOS or endometriosis or irritable bowel, or just eating crappy foods that are really pro-inflammatory, then you do have that cocktail. And I mean, there's something to be said for what you eat during pregnancy, and the and your child's health in their adult years.
Yeah,
So
all that epigenetic programming.
yeah, so like those first 1,000 days are really, really crucial, and so they involve 4 weeks of before conception, all the way through pregnancy, and then all the way to toddlerhood. There's some really pivotal areas where the environment really shapes our genetic programming, and somehow our DNA later on in life remembers what happened and can flick on a switch. Now we see that in a caterpillar when it turns into a butterfly. There's some programming where the switch is clicked, and then all of a sudden this thing grows wings instead of eating my broccoli leaves
From your homemade garden,
which just does my head in. Yeah, so yeah, really important to get the diet right.
Yeah, so probably there is a modicum of truth there, and so improving the temple in all the different ways. I mean, it's probably right up there with smoking and drinking. Having a high, simple carbohydrate diet, simple sugars, lollies, white bread, white rice, white pasta, highly processed foods, it's probably right up there with smoking, really. So, I'll get off my soapbox on that one now.
I mean, it's what we talk about on a daily basis, so it's kind of hard not to get passionate about it.
Yeah. Hey, there's another question here. Is it worthwhile seeing a dietitian while pregnant if you have endometriosis, IBS, and an underactive thyroid? Not everyone's going to have that combination, are they, Nick? But look, any one of those three, endometriosis, IBS, and or an underactive thyroid, do you think it's worth seeing a dietitian?
I wish that every pregnant woman saw a dietitian, regardless, because of that epigenetic factor that has really we really only understood it in recent times, and it's just fascinating. So like a lot of the time when I'm working with fertility patients, I'll have the partner come in, like the male partner come in as a support partner, and all of a sudden this poor guy is like under the spotlight, because I talk about epigenetics, and I talk about how preconception, like the male and the female, are equally involved and equally important in terms of shaping their child's future. So then the male kind of goes, oh, I didn't expect that.
Yeah. Do I have to give up my beer and pizza?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think about what I was like in the 4 weeks before my kids were born, or not born, before they were conceived. And I think, oh, what was I doing then? I didn't really think that I had that much to contribute. But yeah, no, definitely have a better understanding. But yeah, I think obviously the more complex the condition, the more important it is to work with a dietitian. But in the fertility space or in the pregnancy space, with a specialist skill set, really. Because if you go and see a generalist dietitian, it's a bit, I'd say it's a bit hit and miss from experience.
I want to just digress a little bit, because something that I see a lot is when women come into me and talk to me or ask me questions about what can I change in my diet to help my endometriosis, Nick. We all know the endometriosis diet book that is out there. Tell us about the evidence around diet and controlling endometriosis. Probably symptoms, I guess, is what people are wanting to control.
It's a good question. And there's definitely no one size fits all with endometriosis. Like the symptoms can be quite different from patient to patient. The sensitivities to different foods can be really variable as well. I think obviously an anti-inflammatory, like a Mediterranean diet, might be a starting point. And then we kind of go from there to think about some supplements, maybe some turmeric, definitely some omega-3 fatty acids. So if we can't get that through oily fish like salmon and sardines, yuck, I don't like sardines, sorry. Salmon, I love salmon though. What else we got? Herring, Spanish mackerel, trout, tuna, foods like that. But then we've got to worry about the mercury levels there as well, because they can be inflammatory. So eating that, following that kind of meal pattern can be all the person needs. But a lot of the time I'll find that with the Mediterranean diet, there's almost too much fiber. And a lot of the time that fiber just stirs things up in an IBS, irritable bowel syndrome like manner. Bloating, constipation, diarrhea, pain, lots of pain. So then I'd move to more of a potentially a gluten-free approach, just to try that out. And then all the way to a low FODMAP diet. Now, the low FODMAP diet is something that can really help with irritable bowel-like symptoms associated with endometriosis. Doesn't always work, but if the symptoms are really gut-related, then you've got a pretty good chance of that having a great impact. Now, the danger with the low FODMAP diet is it's a therapeutic diet, so it's not designed to be on for a very long time. And I see lots of people on it. Like, I've been on the low FODMAP diet for 2 years. And I'm like, no, who told you to do that? No. So there is a re-challenge phase. You need to personalize the FODMAP diet to suit. I mean, I had this patient with endometriosis come in, would have been about 2 months ago, and she was like emailing me saying, this low FODMAP diet is making me so much worse. I've never felt so much pain. And I was like, maybe we should get off this. I don't want my patient to be in pain. But then we decided to continue on for a little bit longer. She gave it a couple of extra weeks, and then she was like, I haven't felt this good in the last 6 years. This is amazing. Thank you so much. Something just went.
Wow. So it's just like a matter of time, changing that microbiome maybe over a longer period of time.
I think it's more around giving your gut a break, and then slowly working on personalizing, allowing more foods into the diet, and then, really working hard on that microbiome. So then, if you're not familiar with the low FODMAP diet, some of the key foods to avoid are things like garlic and onion, which is really, really hard if you go into an Italian restaurant or any restaurant for that matter. Apples and lactose in dairy, some nuts and seeds, honey, artificial sweeteners. So it's quite a broad range of foods that you need to avoid. But if you go through the process properly, you retest, say, every 6 months, and then you're supposed to improve. You're supposed to better tolerate some of those foods that you were really sensitive to in the past because you gave your gut a nice, relaxing holiday. So, it's about healing the gut so you can eat garlic and onion again.
Yeah, that's what you want. Bring on the garlic and onion. Hey, I'm just scanning through really quickly. For some reason, my feed wasn't rolling. But anyway, somebody's asked, is it possible for insulin resistance to rise when taking metformin? Not the way that metformin works as an insulin sensitizer. I would say that the insulin resistance would rise if you're gaining weight. Would that not be the case?
Oh, yeah. So weight actually rusts the locks to the cells. Yeah. So the key doesn't work as well.
Yeah. So I don't think it's actually the metformin. I think it's looking at other aspects of self. I think somebody else has asked. Yep, go on.
I think the metformin is more like WD-40 for the locks, so that the insulin actually works better.
You've still got to do the work to reduce the insulin drive anyway, the hyperinsulinemia. You stop the tap by stopping the drive to the high insulin. Somebody's asked a question, just a quick one, Nick. I know we've got to wrap up soon. Thoughts on probiotics during pregnancy?
Yeah, probiotics are really, really safe. So there's hardly any I actually haven't seen any adverse effects of probiotics in the literature. So, I mean, but the thing with probiotics is it's kind of like Berocca. So which one do you take?
Which one?
Has it got evidence behind it? Was that study conducted on a demographic similar to yourself? It wasn't like, you know,
non-pregnant women.
Yeah, exactly. Or children. Yeah. So I think like with Berocca, if you're getting all your B vitamins already through the diet, you just pee out the dollar signs, really. And I think our understanding of probiotics at the moment is it's in its infancy, but I think it'll definitely be an amazing area in years to come.
Yeah. But like you said, it's probably not going to do some harm, may do some good. Yeah. Brooke is on. She's asked a question about, oh, goodness. I don't know what AIP is. Gluten, dairy-free, and paleo are often advised for hypothyroidism. Can you touch on this? How would the diet affect women if they're also having other things like PCOS? Not that it's specific or anything. Okay, so let's just summarize these diets. So gluten-free, lactose-free, paleo, which is often recommended by certain healthcare groups for hypothyroidism. And how would that then affect other conditions that someone might have, like PCOS?
Yeah, so hypothyroidism can affect your hormone balance. And
autoimmune protocol. That's what AIP stands for, autoimmune protocol. Never heard of it. Do you know about that?
That's definitely in the realms of the naturopath, I believe. From what I can gather. But yeah, I mean, gluten and dairy free is such an easy first thing to try. I guess what would be important with going gluten free and dairy free is that it is restrictive. So you'd want to test whether it's actually having any benefit or not. And that goes with irritable bowel syndrome as well. You need to test, because the more and more you hear things and try things, like your choices of foods just dramatically decrease. And then you end up in a world of pain, and then you come into my office and break down crying because it's just so stressful. So
and hard work. You've got to work and go out and socialize, and then you've got these restrictions as well. It must be really draining for women.
Yeah, for sure. Imagine what it would be like, right? So yeah, there are some links to inflammation with gluten and dairy intake. There's definitely something there, but usually you know about it, and usually you feel it through the gut, really. You can get blood tests, you can get inflammatory markers tested, all that kind of stuff. But I think with hypothyroidism, it's more around things like getting sufficient iodine and selenium. They'd be two of the key vitamins that I'd be worried about, and eating a whole food balanced diet.
Yeah. So the crux of that for Brooke is test and measure what works, what doesn't. Make sure you're getting your micronutrients that are important for thyroid function. And then in answer to the second part of her question, if they've got other contributing factors such as PCOS. I guess that's then considering what are the aspects of diet that impact on hyperinsulinemia. So you start to manage multiple conditions all at the same time.
Yeah, and I suppose with PCOS, there's some great research coming out around vitamin D and its importance. Also zinc and magnesium, omega-3s. So a lot of the things we've been talking about this whole way through, and you find all these in a well-balanced diet, right?
Yeah, that's it. It comes back to that, doesn't it? Like you can take a lot of extra supplements, but equally you can look and say, well, what foods are they in?
Yeah, my motto is fix the food first.
Yeah.
And then the supplements are an add-on. With vitamin D, it's pretty hard to get that out of food. So getting some sunlight is obviously really important. And then supplementation is pretty good too in that space. But the other ones, you can definitely get those nutrients from diet.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so much information shared. I hope everybody has gotten something out of tonight. We've definitely talked to PCOS, we've talked to miscarriage, we've talked to endo pregnancy, we've talked to a couple of sort of endocrine disorders as well. I want to thank you so much, Nick, for joining us. So to those who missed the very beginning, Nick is an accredited practicing dietitian. He works with us at WOOM, Women's Health Hub, and has a very special interest and lots of extra training in the world of women's health, fertility, gut health, mood and food. And that brings me to, I found the date. Nick is doing a workshop at WOOM for 30 very special guests. I will share the Eventbrite link in the comments of today's live, now that we've figured out how to go live together. It will be held on July the 21st. So for those of you who want to put in your diary, that's in around about 3 weeks' time. Wednesday, July the 21st. He'll be talking about mood and food. We'd love to have you. And for those of you who come along, if you really love it, we might just be able to entice him to do it again as an online event. I think that would be amazing for those of you who aren't here in Perth. But Nick, thank you so much. I've learnt heaps from you tonight, and I've also affirmed a lot of things that I believed. Really appreciate it. Any last words from you, Nick?
I think everyone could come and see a dietitian. Even myself, I think I need to go and see a dietitian as well. Yeah, if you have any complaints or you just want to sift through, fact and fiction, nutrition is just so important. Obviously, I'm biased, but Hippocrates said you are what you eat. So I firmly believe in that. And my mission is to really raise the priority in people's lives of eating a well-balanced diet and getting all the nutrients. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Words of wisdom, my friend. Well, thank you everybody for joining. We hope we have kept you entertained on a Wednesday night in lockdown. Stay safe, look after yourselves, look after those around you, and we look forward to seeing you again, hopefully at WOOM sometime soon. See you later.
Bye, guys. See ya.